Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaskar. Today we will be beginning with our discussion on a very exhaustive topic, which is Salesforce management. This particular topic will spread over several lectures. We will be talking about Salesforce management, and we'll discuss in detail job analysis, recruitment, selection, training, performance appraisal, compensations. This is a topic which will actually be discussed over several lectures and under different heads, and it is a big chunk or a big component of our course on sales and distribution management. Now we shall today with this begin the Salesforce and discussion on Salesforce management, and this is lecture 22, and this is the second lecture in the 5th module on this course on sales and distribution management. So let us today first start with the first component of Salesforce management, which is job analysis. So what are the different topics we shall be covering? We shall be talking about the meaning and definition of a sales job analysis. We will be discussing the importance of a sales job analysis, the purpose as to why this activity is undertaken, and then we will discuss on the outcomes of a sales job analysis, which is the job description and the job specification. So now let us start with the first subtopic here, which is the meaning and definition of a sales job analysis. Now job analysis has been defined as a process by which data with respect to a particular job or a particular position is systematically collected and analyzed. We all know that in an organization we have different kinds of jobs. There are which of course can be arranged in different categories as senior, middle, lower positions in the organization. So we have senior management, we have middle management, we have lower management, we have blue collared workers, we have white collared workers, we have workers and people who are working in an organization with different kinds of job and role requirements. They have different kinds of duties, responsibilities, and they require different kinds of qualifications and skills to perform those different jobs satisfactorily. Now we have to understand that every job in an organization is important, and that is why it exists. If a particular job or if a particular role or a position it was not important or was not significant, then it would not exist in an organization. So we have to understand that every task is significant and important for an organization, and when we decide on the kind of people who we would require to perform jobs, or the number of people who would be needed to perform certain roles, we have to go in for a very exhaustive exercise, which is job analysis. Now job analysis helps us collect data and describe the nature and content of a job, as well as the skills, the qualification, the experience needed in a person to be able to perform the job satisfactorily. So in order to ensure that there is a person job fit and we have the right kind and the right number of people performing a particular job, it's very essential that that companies go in for a job analysis, and they go in for this huge exercise where they have to analyze each and every job in the organization and study it in terms of the roles, the responsibilities, the duties to be performed, the tasks, the activities, as well as the different kinds of skills, qualifications, experience required. So, a job analysis is defined as a process by which data with respect to each of the jobs is systematically collected and described. So, it would define the content of a job, the components of the job, and the circumstances and the environment in which it is to be conducted. It also specifies the minimal knowledge, the skills and the abilities required for performance of a job. So, it helps assign such jobs to people that would match with their skills effectively, that would match with their qualifications, with their skills, with their abilities, even with their physical characteristics effectively, so that there could be a person job fit. So, it is very, very important that organizations go in for this exercise of studying the jobs and then deciding on the number of people or the kind of people required. Also, coming to who would be the right kind of person for the job, and whose qualifications and skills would actually match the role requirements of the job perfectly, is something which will be which we would be able to do better if our organization goes in for this particular exercise. So, a job analysis defines the contents of a job, the components of a job, and the circumstances and the environment in which the job must be performed. It also specifies the minimal knowledge, skills and abilities required for performance of a job. Now, this is when we talk of a general scenario, but if we bring into it more specifically, if we discuss this in the context of sales. So, sales job analysis is the first step in modern sales force management, and it involves systematic gathering of data and study of information regarding the sales job. So, it actually elaborates on the kind of sales jobs, the nature of sales job, the roles, the requirements and the qualifications and skills necessary so that the sales job can be performed in the best possible manner. So, we regard it as the first step in sales force management, and it would involve a systematic gathering and study of information regarding the sales job, systematic gathering of information and the studying of this information regarding the sales job. Now, a sales job is done by sales executives or by the HR department, or can also be done by a third party. So, it can be done by the sales executives in the sales department, or it can be done by the HR department, or it can also be outsourced to a third party, and it would involve two tasks. One, study the work environment of the salesperson, that is the kind of products and services that the salesperson sells, the customers he caters to and the competitors he deals with. Also to determine the duties and responsibilities of the salesperson and his relationship with people in other departments and within the sales function, also his relationship with members of the trade channel, etc. So, here what it actually involves is studying the salesperson's work environment in terms of the kind of products and services he sells, the kind of customers he caters to, whether B2B or B2C, and also the kind of competitive scenario that he faces, and then also to determine the duties and responsibilities of the salesperson and his relationship to people in other departments, to people in the same marketing and sales department, also with members of the trade channel and so forth. Now, let us now come to the importance of a sales job analysis. Why is it important to go into this exercise of a sales job analysis? Now, a sales job analysis will help determine the nature and importance of the job, the duties and responsibilities. It will also illustrate the reporting relationships, who reports to whom, the superior subordinate relationships, the peer relationships. So, it would clarify with salespeople's roles as to when they would work in teams and what their relationship would be when they are working in teams, when this would change into more of a superior subordinate relationship, and in that case who reports to whom, and clear cut delineation of authority, responsibility, etc. would be clarified if one goes in for sales job analysis. Also, the sales job analysis would kind of indicate the skills required for the job, the knowledge, the skills, the abilities, the physical characteristics in certain cases, physical abilities, which means that the person has to be facing a very stressful environment or a very hazardous environment, and so he has to be physically sound. He must have certain he must be certain kind of physical characteristics to be able to bear stresses, or walk a lot, or kind of be able to bear the sun and the rain and things like that, which also refers to the working conditions for the salesperson. So, the nature and importance of the job, the duties, responsibilities, the educational qualifications required, as well as the working conditions in which he has to work, a clear cut demarcation of lines of authority, who would be the subordinate, who would be the superior. All of this becomes very clear when we do a sales job analysis. Reporting relationships here mean that when a salesperson is working in the field, he has to report to the branch manager. So, what would be the as a branch sales manager's role and responsibility must be defined. Similarly, the salesperson's role and responsibility must be defined. So, again when a job analysis is done for a branch sales manager's job and another exercise is done for a salesperson's job, so it will be clear cut demarcation can be made as to what is the role and responsibility of a branch sales manager and the kind of knowledge and skills he must possess, the kind of qualifications and experience he must possess, and on the other hand, what are the roles and responsibilities of the salesperson, and what are the kinds of skills and abilities and qualifications he must possess. So, not only would the sales job analysis help discuss the nature and importance of the job or the job duties and responsibilities, but also clear cut demarcate the kind of functions and roles and responsibilities that a branch sales manager must perform as a superior, and the kind of roles responsibilities with a salesperson must perform as a subordinate. So, the reporting relationships. Now, sales job analysis is a very helpful tool for the HR manager while they go in for recruitment and selection. So, when we do recruitment and selection, we will see that this exercise in the case of the sales function is undertaken generally by both the HR team and the sales team, who both get together and recruit the sales force. So, the sales job analysis is very helpful for the HR manager while recruiting and selecting the right person on the sales job, deciding on the needs for training or the scope of training required for the salesperson, also deciding on the right kind of compensation plan, the performance management systems, etc. So, once a sales job analysis is done, the HR team would be able to understand the kind of recruitment and selection processes they have to design, the kind of compensation packages they have to design, the incentive systems, the performance appraisal, and the kind of training that would be required both at the initial level as a fresh trainee and as well as on a continual basis over the entire lifespan as a sales career for the sales for the conduct of a particular job. So, this is why and how the sales job analysis is important in the sales function. Now, so coming a little more in detail, and we will discuss here with the purposes of the purpose of a sales job analysis. So, first is it helps in manpower planning. Now, job analysis help plan for requirement for the adequate and appropriate manpower at different levels in the marketing and the sales team. So, once a sales job analysis is done, keeping in mind the role requirement, keeping in mind the job, the HR team, and will be able to determine future manpower needs for the sales function to be performed in an effective manner. They would be able to understand the kind of people required and the number of people required, especially in cases where the older staff is retiring or superannuating, or being considered for promotion to higher positions. So in those cases where there may be a scenario where you know, the older the experienced sales people are retiring or superannuating. There may be another situation where the people at the middle level or at the lower level are being considered for positions at higher or middle level respectively, and so fresh trainees are required, or fresh or new salespeople at lower levels are required. So in this case, through a job analysis, through a clear-cut definition of the role and the responsibility and the skills and the qualifications which are required to fill up these positions, the HR department would be better prepared to go in for better recruitment and selection drive. So also the the HR department would be able to understand the kind of people required, the number and kind of people required. Now I would repeat here that when sales force is something, if there is a shortage of sales force, either because of superannuation or because of promotions, in those cases the HR department has to plan for both the adequacy and the appropriateness of the of people who would fill up the various sales jobs which are getting vacant. So in this situation, job analysis will help them plan or decide on the adequacy and appropriateness of manpower at different levels in the marketing and the sales team, so that the sales function can be performed efficiently. Another reason why we must go in for a sales job analysis is recruitment and selection. As I just said that when new recruits are needed and the company realizes that it is in shortage of people in the sales function and it needs more people, again a job analysis will help determine the kind of people required to fill up those positions, and so this would help ensure that the job applicants match with the job openings and there can be a person job fit. Sales job analysis also helps determine training needs, whether it is the initial training needs or continual sales training programs. Sales job analysis also helps in a big way in job evaluation, and job evaluation becomes very, very important in the case of the sales function, because it gets linked. It gets linked to the compensation and the reward plan. Now the sales function is something which is, because of its peculiar nature and scope, demands that there are extra incentives or benefits which are given to the sales team to keep them motivated on their job. But this is something which may not always be welcome or acceptable by other people in other departments. There is always this question which is posed as to why should people in the sales or why should people in the marketing team be rewarded more or be given different kinds of incentives. Now in this scenario, the job analysis acts as a very, very vital tool to justify and logically explain as to why the sales team and the sales force need to be compensated differently to other members in the in comparison to other employees in the organization. This is done through job evaluation. Now job evaluation helps evaluate the importance of the jobs and assess the total worth of a job in relation to other jobs, so that a rational pay structure can be established. And because when we go in for a job analysis, the next step of job evaluation also becomes easy, because once it is known that what are the different kinds of duties and responsibilities, as well as the knowledge and skills required to perform a particular sales job, once it is also known about the kind of working environment or the working conditions the salesperson will face, the job analysis will help the HR department evaluate it with other jobs in the organization, and so the salespeople being paid more would get justified because the nature of the job, the duties and responsibilities, the skills and qualifications required for them to be able to attain their targets or their in terms of sales is something which will be very easily defined or explained. So because the HR people go in for this exercise of job analysis, and they are helped in this exercise by the marketing and sales team, they get a vital tool again to which they can produce and use against those opponents who feel that the sales job or the sales function need not be compensated differently. Once a job analysis is done, once the evaluation has been done, the HR people can very easily explain to others that is the reasons behind the sales team and the sales force being paid extra or compensated differently to others in the workplace. So the job evaluation exercise helps evaluate the importance of the job in comparison to other jobs, and so rational pay structure may be established. But in order to actually do this, in order to establish a rational pay structure, job evaluation is necessary, and for job evaluation to be conducted, it is very important that a sales job analysis is done. So what we are trying to say is that the sales job analysis helps in job evaluation, and job evaluation would further be an answer to as to why a rational pay structure should be established, something which is very different to and salespeople should be paid something which is very different to what others are being paid in the organization. So this is again talking about not only the salary but also the incentives. The sales job analysis also helps in performance appraisals. It helps in setting realistic job performance standards, whether they are qualitative standards or quantitative standards. The HR team and the marketing team can sit together and they decide on the various parameters or the performance standards on which people performing different sales roles and sales functions should be appraised. So this is again because of the nature of the sales job, which is very, very target oriented, and sometimes very challenging goals are set, and sometimes even unrealistic goals are set. So keeping in mind this particular fact, it's very important that performance appraisal is done carefully based on the standards, and in order to have these sound standards, sales job analysis again becomes important. So if we see, sales job analysis helps in manpower planning, it helps in recruitment, it helps in selection, because it clearly defines the number of people needed, the kind of people needed, and so it becomes very easy for the HR team to recruit and select the right kind of people for the sales job. A sales job analysis also explains the kind of training needs that would be required for people who are joining fresh, or new are joining at lower levels in the organization or at middle levels in the organization. These training and development needs again would be determined on the basis of the role requirements, which are again defined by job analysis. So job analysis helps in training and development, it helps in job evaluation, and through job evaluation the HR team can actually counter, the HR team can logically explain a rational structure for the sales team, and can even counter arguments from others as to why people in the sales and marketing team should be compensated differently. And of course, sales job analysis also helps in performance appraisal because it gives vital clues while setting standards with respect to what the kind of duties, responsibilities, the nature of the job, and the skills which are required typically to perform the sales job. So that is why sales job analysis is very important, and it has to be conducted in the organization. Now, what are the outcomes of a sales job analysis? When we speak of a job, job analysis and its outcomes, we talk of two things, which is sales job description and sales job specification. The job description delineates the nature of the job, the scope of the job, as well as the duties and responsibilities associated with the job. And the job specification explains the minimum skills and qualifications that are required in a person to perform the job satisfactorily. Now, this will help hire the right person for a sales position. So, if we see sales job specifications will help us in recruitment, in selection, in determining training needs, and sales job description will help us set performance standards, and of course the compensation and reward plan, and during job evaluation. So, what we saw in the previous slide and what we discussed, if we go back, we see that recruitment, selection, training and development is something which are greatly benefited through job specification, while remuneration, performance appraisal, job evaluation is something which is benefited or through job description, or it can be better done through a job description. Now, if we go a little more and explain sales job description more, the sales job description is an outcome of the data collected during the job analysis. It deals with the content of the job, what does the sales job position do, how is it done, under what conditions is it done. So, it describes the duties, responsibilities as well as the tasks and activities required to perform the job, its relationship to other jobs, its interdependence to other jobs, the reporting relationships, the nature of the working environment, the health hazards if any. So, this is something which a sales job description would define. Health hazards in the case of sales job could be the salesperson working in extreme climatic conditions, or the salesperson being made to stay on board and lodge in very adverse environments, which could lead to health problems. Also, they could relate to travel and in areas which are inaccessible by transport. So, all of this is something which is clearly demarcated in the sales job description. More specifically, it would also specify the types of products to be sold by the salesperson, the customer segment he has to cater to, the reporting structure, the frequency of making sales calls, the location and geographic area that he must cater to, amount of travel he will have to do, etc. So, it would specify the types of products to be sold, customer segments to be catered to, reporting structure, frequency of making sales calls, location and geographic area, and the amount of travel. And so, it would help in the grading and classification of jobs, explaining the reporting relationships, developing performance measures, and placement of employees in terms of initial placement or promotions and transfers. Now, again here this would be vital when decisions with respect to manpower planning, recruitment and selection have to be taken. The other outcome of the sales job analysis is sales job specification, which is a statement of minimum skills, qualifications required to do a job. Also, the physical characteristics and other abilities, experience required to perform a job, etc., have to be are stated. The personal attributes, which we mentioned here, or the personal characteristics, may further be categorized as essential or desirable or contraindicators. Essential are those which are extremely important and must be present for a person to perform well on the job. They pertain to the knowledge, skills and abilities, or the KSA. Desirable are those which, if present, would help perform the job better, and contraindicators are those which, if present, would hamper the performance. So, they should not be present at all. So, we would not like a salesperson to have certain kinds of physical characteristics or skills, and that is which will hamper his performance, and that is how we define as contraindicators. So, what does the sales job specification help us? It again helps us in manpower planning, recruitment, selection, training, development, performance appraisal, job evaluation. As I mentioned, because of the knowledge, skills, expertise, people may be promoted and either or maybe transferred to other departments. So, in a way, either an upward movement or a lateral movement which would ensure career planning for the employees, is again something which is a takeaway from sales job specification, or it's something which would be benefited if a sales job specification is done. So, what is the process of a sales job analysis? You identify the sales job to be analyzed, you gather information with respect to the sales job. Now, information here would be what type of data or what type of information to be collected, methods to be used, who would collect the data. Information about the job can be collected through the use of questionnaires, they can conducting interviews, and through direct observation. So, once a sales job which is to be studied or analyzed is identified, the next step is to gather information about the sales job. So, information, it's important that decisions are taken with respect to what kind of information is to be collected, who will collect the information, what are the methods that are going to be used, and methods here could either be based questionnaires, or could be through interviews or through direct observation. Interviews again could be individual or group interviews. Questionnaires are used, which are generally rating scales, and there are two very popular scale questionnaires which are used for a job analysis, which is a position analysis questionnaire and the management position description questionnaire. So, it should be very clearly specified as to who would be doing this exercise, who would participate in the process, whether it is going to be the sales people or the sales managers, or whether it is going to be the HR managers, or it is going to be outsourced to third party and to consultants. Once information is gathered, it is processed and a job description and job specification is prepared. Now, a little more on the questionnaires. When data is collected or information about a sales job is gathered through questionnaires, employees are asked questions about the kind of activities they perform, as well as their duties and responsibilities. Rating scales are used wherein the importance of a task is rated, and two scales which we use, as I mentioned, is the PAQ and the NPTEL. PAQ is the position analysis questionnaire, and the NPTEL is the management position description questionnaire. These are both behavioral measures. With this, we come to an end of this particular session. So, we have references, and then with this we come to an end of the second lecture on the 5th module of the course. I hope you found this lecture fruitful. Thank you.